I've had beef with like a Warzone streamer called Z-Laner in the past, and that song was a sort of skit of him. So like I've gone in like to one of his songs. It's actually him doing the vocals in that song that somebody else has made.
I'm waiting for the lawsuit.
I'm waiting for the lawsuit. Hey, don't be cut that out. Hey. Cut that.
It's gonna be a banger, folks.
What's going on, guys, and welcome back to the Triple B podcast. Today, me and BadBoy Beaman have got a very special guest. None other than JayST has decided to join us today. So, let's get into it.
Welcome to the podcast, Jay.
Thank you.
How's your week been since the fight last weekend?
No, well, it's been surprisingly all right, to be fair. I've had really good response, good feedback. And yeah, I can't wait to get back in the ring.
How many takeaways have you had since the fight?
Every night this week.
Every night? Jesus, you sound like me. Yeah, if you've starved yourself like of any bad food in the lead up to the fight, like it's the first thing you're going to want to do is just going to go and binge on all the food you've missed, isn't it?
I think what a lot of people need to remember is I was dieting and that before my training camp. So I've been away from bad food for months. So it's the first thing I wanted to do.
So we're calling it a full relapse then?
A full relapse. It is a relapse, isn't it, really?
Yeah, I'm to be fair, I understand it. Like, I'm currently on a diet, like, trying to get the beach body sorted and that.
You've got a long way to go.
Okay, well, now that we've broached the elephant in the room, let's talk about the fight. Let's not talk about the fight. Let's talk about the weekend. So, obviously, when you got down to Worthing, you had a press conference and the face-off / weigh-in on the Saturday. No, so it was on the Friday. That was on the Friday, wasn't it? So you had the weigh-in, you had the press conference on the Friday. What were your first impressions of your opponents of when you first saw BadBoy Beaman in the flesh on the Friday?
To be fair, it was quite awkward because I wrapped up about 2 hours before and I was the only one in that room with their opponents at the time. And I didn't really want to say hello or anything. I just trying to keep myself to myself. But it's quite a small room, so I'm trying to say hi to everyone, but at the same time trying to avoid Baz.
Yeah, it's an awkward situation, and to be fair, they told everybody to get there about 5 o'clock, but they didn't actually start the press conference until 7. So it was actually really awkward. Everyone was just sort of stood around, like either making eye contact or avoiding eye contact. Like, to me, I was just sort of trying to chill out. But it was a really hot day. I chose to wear tracky pants. I was going to wear a full trackie, but it was too hot for that. But I wore tracky pants, and it was awkward, like, and everyone was just sort of like mingling in the little groups and sort of sticking to them groups until we got the call up to the stage. It was awkward for sure, yeah.
Do you know what as well? It could have been quite bad that, because obviously you've got, how many fights were on the night? 6 or 7 fights, was it? 7 fights. So you've got 14 fighters there. Obviously, I mean, not everyone, but a lot of the fighters, there's been a lot of... I mean, your fight wasn't so much, it was quite respectful in the build-up and obviously throughout. But there was a lot of fights where there was, a fair bit of trash talk going on, leaving people sat in a hot room for 2 hours with somebody that they know they're going to go and whose head they're going to try and punch in the following day. Like, it could easily, have sparked a frigging brawl or something, you know what I mean? Like, it only take one person to kick off, look at someone the wrong way, and it all goes off. So
it almost did, really, didn't it, with Tommy Pin Dickerton and Alfred Sucks.
Yeah, well, I wanted to talk about him, but I feel like we'll leave that till after we've talked about your fight, lads.
Yeah.
But we'll bring him up, like, he's a funny subject, let's put it that way. Okay, so weigh-in's done. I'd be honest, I thought your press conference, to me, it felt like neither of you really wanted to be there. Like, sat, being interviewed, talking. You both looked probably a bit more comfortable in the face-off. Yeah, that's probably it. Yeah.
It's about like 10 o'clock by the time we were done.
I mean, I thought the face-off was quite... You seemed almost like comfortable, like it was like the end of having to do all this press bullshit and getting interviewed and that, and like you got to sort of stand face to face with each other, look each other in the eyes, say who's a big boy then, and get underway for the next day.
Yeah, that's something else as well I want to talk about then, right? Okay, Jay. He grabbed hold of me belly and says, who's a big boy then? But, right, I've watched that back and You hesitated a couple of times whether or not to do it. I see you looking at me belly a few times, inching your sort of hand out your pocket. Like, what was the thought process there while that was happening? Were you thinking, what if he fucking slaps me? What if he does this? What was going through your head when you done that?
So I wasn't gonna do it, but I was there by my mates at work. I said, you need to go to him, grab his belly and say, who's a big boy? Otherwise, I wouldn't have bothered doing it.
So that was a dare of someone in work, yeah?
Yeah, mate,
Fair play. Fair play.
Yeah. I hope you made some money out of that.
Get that? Is that what paid for your Dominoes then? Yeah.
Yeah, well, paid for my food.
That was funny. So obviously, like I say, your build up to the fight was pretty professional. I'd say you both acted quite well. You know what I mean? There was respect and, I mean, you know, not admiration or anything like that. Obviously, you knew you were getting in to fight each other, but at the same time, you weren't really trash talking each other. Nothing bad anyway. Just a little bit of back and forth just to hype the fight, but not getting personal. So let's talk about somebody who was talking a lot of shit, was getting very personal with people, and definitely took it too far at the press conference all the way. Tommy Pinkerton. What is it? It's Pinkerton. I keep calling him Pinky. So yeah, it's Tommy Dickinson. Yeah, that's what we'll call him.
Don't use steroids, kids. It shrinks your nut.
The first thing to say, right, obviously you were in the room as that was going on. A lot, like, you could tell from watching it, it wasn't like, Halford wasn't expecting it. I thought Halford framed it quite well, you know, he took it and he didn't react in a, you know, it could have quite easily, like, I imagine if that was, I know for a fact, if that was BadBoy Beaman that had took the slap, that fight would never have made it to fight night. That would have been over.
I'd have bit his face off.
Yeah.
One thing I do want to touch on with the press conference and stuff, right? Like, how did it feel, Jay, when like other people in the crowd were getting involved? Obviously, Nitro Luke turned up and he started shouting stuff at you. And hey, don't get me wrong, I thought you gave it back quite well. You know, listen, I'm the one with the microphone. I'm the one up on that poster. You know what I mean? But what sort of like vibes were you feeling at that moment? Was it nerves or was it like just like pure banter and just reaction?
You know what? It was definitely more just like a reaction. I was actually more nervous for the press conference than I was the actual fight, because talking's not really my thing. So I think from someone who was very quiet, I was probably the loudest on there on the day.
Yeah, probably.
You've done a good job in the press conference, and to be honest, like, even though I've had a lot of fights in the past, I've never had to go through a press conference like that. That's something that like you see on the pro scene all the time. Obviously, I've got like experience in front of the camera, but when I'm recording at home, right, when I'm recording, doing my videos for YouTube, I'm sat in an office on my own. There isn't a whole crowd there watching, so it was definitely a little bit more daunting than I was expecting. But I think we both handled it pretty well. Obviously, you ended up having a little bit of a back and forth as well with two of my coaches who were there on the night. And you said to Chrissy, "Who are you?" And he goes, "The coach of my dad."
For context, for anyone who didn't see the press conference, obviously BadBoy Beaman had two coaches with him, and we couldn't actually see it, could we, in the crowd? But one of them, I think Jay, you shouted, "Who are you?" And he shouted back, "I'm his dad, can't you tell?"
And he's black. So like, I mean, he's clearly not my dad. But it was like a moment of silence, like, and everyone looked and burst out laughing straight away. It was hilarious. I completely broke the tension, whatever was going on in that press conference. That moment there was what it was. I thought that it was hilarious. I enjoyed it thoroughly, but I definitely felt more comfortable getting into the ring than I did the press conference, for sure.
I think with getting the difference between getting into the ring and obviously doing the press conference, like, I know obviously this was your first fight, wasn't it, Jay? But you've even then you've spent months training, getting in the ring, fighting people. So getting in to actually fight someone, it's not something that you're gonna have. I mean, I'm not saying you won't have nerves, but you're not gonna end up like having crippling anxiety over it, or you'd hope not anyway. Whereas if if you're just thrown on the spot, I think if you're just thrown on the spot to speak in front of a crowd, knowing that it's being live streamed, knowing that it's being recorded for YouTube, I can see why that could, for most people, would be more daunting than actually getting in and letting people punch you. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. It was an awkward one, wasn't it? Like, but the ring entrance and stuff like that for me was the biggest moment for that fight. Obviously, I don't know whether you're aware of this, Jay, but I've had beef with like a Warzone streamer called Z-Laner in the past, and that song was a sort of skit at him. So like I've gone in like to one of his songs. It's actually him doing the vocals in that song that somebody else has made.
I'm waiting for the lawsuit.
Hey, don't be cut that out. Hey. Cut that. But no, that was like the biggest thing for me. But like on the day, right? I haven't been well either since like the Tuesday before the fight. So I've been like drinking Lemsips, taking all sorts of tablets to try and get myself better. On the night, I still felt like shit, and I ended up waking up that morning with a really bad back. After the travel down the day before, my lower back was all tight. So I'd lay in bed all day doing stretches with a massage going on my back, and like...
Sure that wasn't just the age?
Well, listen, like, bad backs come with age, mate, they do, and I am a lot older than you, so I do think that's partial, it's got a part to play in it, but...
because he wasn't allowed to bring his walking stick into the ring, that's all.
I needed my Zimmer frame. No, but the drive down, it really did cripple me back, and I honestly went into that ring thinking I might lose. I might genuinely lose this fight, and it was a tough one for me. It was a very good fight as well.
Do you know what? Now that you've said that, we'll segue into this. I will say, I watched the whole card live, and obviously you don't know me, Jay. Obviously, you do, bad boy. But I've watched boxing since I was like 6 or 7 years old. Like, I've never competed myself. I've done very little training.
Exercise in any shape or form.
But like I understand and I know boxing to watch and to like just to assess a fighter and see how good they are. And I thought there was a couple of alright fights on the night. I'll be honest with you, I was expecting your fight to be over within the first minute. Like going into it, I was like, he's never fought before. He's smaller.
Yeah.
He's inexperienced. I know how hard he hits as well. Like, no one on the internet knows how hard he hits. I know how hard he hits. I've seen him hit. I've been hit. Like, I know how hard he can hit.
Tell me more, Jay. What does it feel like, mate?
Well, let's just say I could be run over by a truck and it would still feel lighter.
So, Face Santana, if you're watching, yeah, remember that. You're next.
Just run yourself over with a truck and get out of the fight. Do it now.
It's the easy way out.
It's the easy option. No, but like I say, I was expecting it. My anticipation going into it was that this will be over quick. He's going to hit, like, soon as that left straight lands, it's night-night, it's game over. First thing that shocked me, because within about, I think it was within the first 10 or 15 seconds, he caught you with a lovely overhand left. Rocked your head back. Yeah. You went back against the ropes, and I thought, that's it. Good night, Jay. Well done for lasting 10 seconds.
Mate, yeah, genuinely, I saw stars.
Yeah, well, it was actually, I was very sloppy in the first 15 seconds of that fight. I went in and threw an overhand left and missed. And then Jay got me in the corner. And I was like, shit. Like, oh my God, he's got me in the corner. What the fuck, you know?
And to be fair, he landed a nice little combo in that exchange as well.
Yeah, he did. But then I tightened my guard up. Just tightened my guard up and hit him with that left hook, which flew him back. Then I got him in the other corner, hit him with the straight left. And then as he bounced back, I hit him with a right hook. And he just kept on his toes, just kept bouncing. I was like, fuck.
That was literally the moment in the fight that I knew, like, I wouldn't say I knew. I was like, I don't know if you can knock him out. Because I could see that was your left hand, like, giving it 100%, and it didn't even wobble him. And it sent him back against the ropes with the force of it, but your legs didn't buckle, and I was like, wow, that's a fucking chin, man. Like, you know what? It doesn't matter what you do. On the internet, you're always going to have trolls who are like, oh yeah, but I'm sure he doesn't hit that hard, or yeah, he's got no power. Look, he didn't knock this guy out in the first round. Like, to stand and come back forward and not even just go to the canvas not be out cold, not even let your legs wobble from that punch, and then to keep coming forward for another 2.5 rounds after that. Like, I genuinely feel like you need like a lot of credit for that, because
He needs at least a medal, Rich, if you're watching.
like you bear in mind as well, I know you've spoken about it yourself, that you're not a natural heavyweight. You know what I mean? You're fighting well above the weight you should have been at. You could potentially maybe even get down towards light heavyweight. So you're taking full power heavyweight punches there and still walking forward. So if you do go down to cruiserweight, or you do go down to light heavyweight, your chin's gonna carry you. Even if you get in against someone who's powerful, tough, maybe a better fighter, that chin should carry you through quite nicely.
Well, it all comes down to the conditioning.
Yeah, well, yeah, conditioning plays a part. I think I think with chin though, a lot of it's natural, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, I think with a lot of fighters, you can either take a punch or you can't. There's only a certain degree. Like you can build muscle in your neck, and you can work on certain aspects of being able to take a punch. But at the end of the day, it's a natural thing. Whether
let me
go
tell
out or
you,
not.
Jay, yeah, your chin, mate, that hasn't come from any form of training. That hasn't come from strength and conditioning or nothing. That's just natural. Like, if I hit me with my punches, right, like, I reckon I'd have gone down sooner than you did. That's all I'm going to say. Like, I've got a lot of power in my punches, but you've got one hell of a chin on you. Like, I can't even explain it. So there was so many moments in there. Obviously, I'd already put a prediction video out anyway. I think you sort of caught wind of me talking about it on one of my videos about going for the body. Like, I was going to go for the body shots. Now, I did actually manage to get quite a few of them off. I hit you with a few left hooks to the body, as well as sneaking some right ones in there as well. I actually think the second or the first knockdown, you had to stand an 8, and the second knockdown, I think that was a right hook to the body to put you down eventually, wasn't it?
Yeah. To be fair, watching it back, I thought it was the uppercut, but from
But I wasn't sure if it was an uppercut or not. Yeah, it hit you like right in the armpit, and then you took a knee off that. Like, so obviously after trying to bomb you out in the first round and failing, I thought, right, I've got to work his body down now. I've got to tire him out, and then try again when he's a little bit weaker. Because what happens is your hands get lower and your chin ends up in the air, and you've got no energy. And with that lack of energy, you start tiring out, and maybe one punch here or there it might knock you over, not knock you out, but knock you over. And that was my game plan going into the second round, was that I needed to sort of take every opportunity I could and and just pick it apart and try and pick the body apart. And to be honest, because you were using the cross arm stance, it was quite hard for me to sink them body shots in. So it was a good stance, mate. One thing I would say to you though, in future, keep your hands a little bit higher.
Oh, that cross arm stance isn't really my stance. I don't know why I was doing that on the night. I'll have to start posting some of my unreleased footage, but my guard's usually quite high up. So I think it's genuinely just the energy that was sapped from me.
Yeah, it was all out though. One thing I will say, and this is something I stand by as well. I think you beat any other heavyweight who was on that card, any one of them.
Yeah.
I honestly think, watching back all the fights, there's not a single heavyweight on there who is a better boxer than you, or who has a chin just like you. So I think you stand a chance at actually becoming the best SCB boxer, heavyweight boxer, that is.
I'd agree with that.
Yeah.
I think I think straight away, even though there might have been people who might have had a little bit more training or experience than you prior to this fight, you boxed better than anyone by a mile. Like, your footwork was better. You threw your jab better. Like, the way you got out of tough situations when you were on the ropes and stuff, like, nobody else was moving anywhere near that, like, at all on the night. The two of you, it was like, I mean, I'm not saying that it was like a professional fight in terms of the standard, but compared to all the other fights on the card, like, it was almost like having a professional fight on an amateur card. There was just that much of a gulf in class, I thought. Yeah,
definitely. I've actually sparred lads who've had, like, you know, all the way through my camp. I've been struggling to get sparring partners. They don't want to come in and spar me.
Yeah.
I don't know why. But the lads I've been sparring, I've had lads coming in who've had like 10 fights, 7 fights, right? And you move a lot better than them. You know, your confidence in the ring is much better than theirs. And these are lads who are undefeated as well. Like, I'm not going to name the names because I don't want to call them out like that, but I feel that you were a better boxer on the night than any of them guys were for me sparring, building up to the fight.
I mean, I'd say that's a good testament to your skills then, Jay, and I think definitely get your weight down, get yourself into and like just a place where you're not carrying any excess weight in a fight. And I genuinely would say this, I think maybe get yourself another couple of fights through SCB or white collar or whatever, get a bit of experience under your belt, and then even have a look at the amateurs. I genuinely would, I think.
Yeah, I think amateurs definitely where I want to go.
You do well in the
That's
amateurs, you would. I just think that if it's money, if it's about money, then there's more money to be made in the content creation side of it. Eventually, further down the line, obviously. But if it's just about the love of the sport, then definitely go through the amateurs, man. You can end up in the nationals and getting trophies and medals in the amateurs, and then you can turn pro. You're only, 19 years old, so you've got, if you do the amateurs for the next 3 and 4 years, turn pro when you're like 22, 23, right? And you'll do well, you'll have a decent career, and you're in a good gym as well because you're training with, or in the same gym as, what's his name? Is it Dakers?
Yeah, Sullivan Dakers, yeah.
The heavyweight English. Yeah, so
English heavyweight champ,
he's instantly signed to Matchroom Boxing for his debut fight as a professional. Obviously, he done well in the amateurs and stuff as well. So he's got that amateur background, and that's what having an amateur background can gain you. You do well in the amateurs, take that into the pro game. You're going with the big promotion straight off the rip then. Because people want to see you.
Yeah. If you do well in amateurs, if you can make a name for yourself in amateur fights, like Matchroom, Queensbury, all them will be lining up to sign you. That's the way to go. Like, I mean, I know there's a lot of everyone. I always find I don't really like white collar boxing. I don't have a problem with it, and if people want to do it, that's fine. But if you're a good prospect as a boxer, it's just the wrong route, in my opinion. That you don't learn enough because you're not fighting fighters of a high enough caliber all the time, at least, to improve. And I think, again, you don't gain the recognition within professional circles to have enough clout to go pro and get a decent deal to start with as well. So I think amateurs definitely would be on the cards for you. And if you can improve and learn with obviously the speed you've picked up boxing for this first fight going forward, then there's nothing stopping you ending up reaching the pro ranks, mate.
Yeah, I back that.
So Jay, obviously it was a tough fight. We've been obviously through the fight. You've been through the fight. Everyone's been through the fight who's been around surrounding it, as it was clearly fight of the night. But we won't get into that now. How did you feel after the fight? Like, what was your reaction? Obviously, taking a knockout's never going to be an easy thing to deal with, but how did you cope with it, and how did you feel after the fight?
My emotions were really mixed, because I was so gutted because I trained really, really hard for this fight, but I was so proud at the same time.
Yeah.
So I was going around smiling, having pictures. Then I'd literally, for like 5 minutes, just be tearing up, bawling my eyes out, then go straight back to being happy. So it took me a little while. A week later, it's all finally settled in a bit now. So I'm just ready for the next fight, mate.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And to be fair, I mean, I can understand losing when, especially obviously you put so much work into the build up. You're never going to just be happy to take a loss. It's always going to be an upsetting experience.
Yeah.
But I don't think you got anything to feel particularly negative about. Really, it's you could have lost a lot worse than you did. So anyone else getting in that ring certainly would have lost a lot worse than you did.
Yeah.
To be fair, at the end of the day, it's a bit of a mismatch in experience, in some of the attributes like weight, obviously, and power being one of the big attributes that have a disparity because you're not really fighting at your natural weight. But literally, again, to make it halfway through the third round, to not just take, I know talking about you taking punches in your chin, but to fight with the level of ability that you showed was honestly nothing short of commendable. I think you got every reason to be proud and not very much reason to have much negative thoughts coming from the fight. Like, you know, you got knocked out by someone who's a much harder puncher and is a natural heavyweight and has more experience than you. And honestly, you mixed it up well better than I think anybody going into that fight especially anyone who knew how good BadBoy Beaman was expecting. And like we just said earlier, I also think that you've got a very bright future. And I think as much as that fight didn't go the way you wanted it, it's given you a lot more clout within that scene now to just say, I'm going to say he's not bad. Like, that's not an easy matchup. Maybe people, like, I wouldn't say think twice about taking the fight, but people will understand that they're not getting in for a walk in the park.
But that's something I'll touch on now as well, actually, is that I obviously posted the full fight on my boxing YouTube channel, and there's not a single comment. Well, there's a couple of trolls in there, but other than the trolls, like, everyone's sort of like showing massive respect to you, saying how good of a fight you put up and stuff like that. But one thing I want to say to you now is that I personally have said already earlier on that I think you beat any heavyweight who was on that card. But if there was anyone you would like to call out for a fight who was on that card, who would it be?
Well, at the end of our post-fight interview, I had a face-off with Anton Bell. He was on that for Cowboy Stew. We were actually supposed to fight on the first SCB event. We both had to pull out of that. So I think our next plan is for that fight. SCB3, potentially. We could be seeing that.
I think one thing's for sure, right? And I think Anton will know this, because if you go and watch our fight back and watch the crowd, you can see Anton watching on very carefully.
Yeah.
He's watching both of us. He's watching you more so, and he's watching your ability. Now, you box. You got into the ring and you box clean. You were throwing straight punches. You were moving. You were on your toes. You were in and out. You know, you were doing things that are the fundamentals of boxing. Whereas when Anton got in against Cowboy Stew, he was throwing quite wild punches and they were landing. Yeah, but Cowboy Stew wasn't really moving out the way. And a lot of their fight consisted of them having to have their bloody head guards readjusted and stuff. So so like, obviously, I think personally that's
head guards.
Yeah. I think going into the fight against Anton Bell, for me personally, and this is nothing against Anton either, based on your performances from the first show, well, from SCB 002, I think that you come out of that victorious. I honestly would like to see you against Tommy Pinkerton, whatever his name is. Yeah, I think that guy's got a hot head and he needs to be put in his place. Unfortunately, Alfred Sucks wasn't able to do it. But I think you'd outbox him and outclass him in every aspect of boxing.
I think you'd absolutely batter him over 4 rounds. Whether or not you'd be able to get a knockout, I think you probably would end up being able to, because he's got 0 head movement. He walks forward and backwards in straight lines. He'd be there for the taking.
Yeah.
If I was to pick a fight for you next that I'd want to see for entertainment, that'd be the fight I'd want to see. I think that'd be a very, very interesting fight at cruiserweight. Definitely.
I don't think that Tommy would be able to get to cruiserweight. Him and Halford
he'd have to lay off the peds for a bit, but he probably could.
But him and Halford were meant to fight at cruiserweight. They were both at cruiserweight, and then Tommy ended up putting loads of, put about bloody 5-6 kilo on in the space of 3 weeks, which is, if anyone knows, that's kind of unnatural weight to be gaining and still look that shredded and ripped. So so that happened, and I think that as well, Tommy walks around with his chin up in the air, right? And no one, Halford didn't test it. Halford didn't get the opportunity to truly test, landing clean shots. But I think if you were to be in and out with your straight shots against someone like Tommy, you're winning that fight. And more range for you as well, because you get to get inside and work the body and get out. And you've got plenty of time between now and SCB 003 to work on certain aspects of that. Like, you've come into this fight with 2 months notice, 2.5 months notice. So it sort of gives you more time to plan for it. But I think obviously there's a sort of beef there between you and Anton Bell, because you were meant to fight on number 1 and it didn't go through. But I think maybe take it a step up first. let Anton have another fight. You have a fight against Tommy, and you know if you both win, then maybe you fight each other. Maybe there's a title on the line at that point. You know what I mean?
I mean that I think that'd be a good way to go. To be fair, you get. I think as well. Like if you're looking for someone who's going to test you in your next fight, but maybe is obviously closer to your level and of experience than obviously the fight last week. I think Tommy would be a good fight for that. Just because
I was just saying, a lot of people want me to have like a warm-up fight. A lot of people have been messaging me saying, "Oh, you know, I'm all right in skill. You know, if you want a warm-up fight." But I ain't here for any warm-ups. You know.
So what you're saying is Anton Bell is a warm-up fight. Are you listening, Anton? You just see you as a warm-up.
Next week's guest, Anton Bell.
You know what? All of his mates come to me after the fight and they said, "Oh, please don't fight him."
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. Like, obviously, people can see talent. Like, whether they're being biased or unbiased, it doesn't matter. Like, you are a talented guy who's trained for a couple of months for his debut fight and gone in against an experienced fighter. Yeah. So, Anton was watching on, like, he was twiddling his thumbs and fingers while he was watching as well. Like, I watched every aspect of his body language while he was watching it. I mean, I could be misreading it, but, you know, I'm not a body language expert, but I do feel like he seemed kind of intensely uncomfortable whilst watching the fight.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that'd be a good fight for you. But I think the better fight would be to go for the cocky, arrogant prick who is Tommy and knock him spark out.
I would love to see that because, let's face it,
you become the people's champion at that point when you beat Tommy.
The people's SCB champion, that's what you would be.
You would?
I'd love that fight. Absolutely love it. I think this week I'm having a call.
One thing I will say, though, if you want to cut down on the weight, mate, if you want to get a cruiser, you have to lay off them takeaways, otherwise you'll end up back in the old tricks where you just eat and eat for fun.
Yeah, nah, I've put half a stone on since the fight.
Yeah, well, you want to get that off quick, man. And one thing I will say, start doing some weight as well. Do some weight, man. Build some muscle on them skinny arms.
Yeah, well, the plan for the next couple of months, I think I have to drop a stone now to cruiserweight. Then once I'm nice in the cruiserweight, start putting that muscle on.
Yeah, you'll have to like sort of keep maintaining the fat loss and the muscle gain just to keep yourself there. Like, but it's a hard process. Yeah. But once you get there with your fundamentals you've already got and whatever you'll learn between now and then, I expect to see some explosive fights from you, Jay.
Yeah.
Likewise. And I think, like we said before, mate, I've got to be honest, I think your future within boxing is as bright as you want it to be. So, Jay, thanks for coming on. It's been brilliant to hear you, obviously, all about the fight from your perspective. Yeah. Guys, if you want to see any more from JayST, all his socials will be linked in the description below. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time on the Triple B Podcast.